What does copper, carriages, art galleries, and gardens have in common? My. Another episode of Bridgerton. Cheerio, everyone. This is D. Movieman, fellow cinephile, popcorn addict, and emerging film critic, coming to you with reliable recaps, reviews, and reactions. And today, of course, I'm coming to you all with another episode of Bridgerton. Season 2, Episode 7, Harmony. This episode was directed by Cheryl Dunye. She's the director, producer, screenwriter, editor, and actress. A quintuple threat, if you will. She's previously directed films like The Watermelon Woman, The Owls, and Valencia. And she's previously directed for TV series like Queen Sugar, Claws, David Makes Man, and The Umbrella Academy, among many others. This episode was also written by Oliver Goldstick. He's a screenwriter and executive producer, and he's previously written for TV series like Desperate Housewives, Ravenswood, and High School Musical, the series. And now, let us commence. So we open up this episode seeing the news spread around town about the highly anticipated wedding that didn't happen. And of course, Lady Whistledown is taking it upon herself to lay the blame solely at the Queen's feet, which the Queen already knew was going to happen. Next, we see the Sharma women relaxing in some very luxurious looking bathtubs made out of copper. Well, at least they appear to be relaxed. It's very obvious that this bath is doing nothing to warm up the cold shoulder that Edwina is still giving Kate. We hit our title card, then we make our way over to the Bridgerton estate, where all the Bridgertons are gathered together, discussing the most recent wedding disaster. Violet recognizes that they must move quickly to curb the rumors and gossip that are swirling all over town. Eloise, however, can't begin to understand how all of this fallout happened because a woman decided to change her mind. Yet and still, they must all face the potential consequences. So, in the meantime, they have to make their way over to Promenade, something that none of them is in the mood for. However, Eloise has decided to make her way across town for a shopping trip. But as she prepares to leave, she's quite shocked to see that a rather ornate carriage has arrived for her. And yes, it's none other than the Queen herself, and apparently she's rather interested in having a conversation. Uh-oh. We then see Lady Danbury and the Sharmas out on Promenade, and it looks as if the ton is none too receptive to them, given recent events. Lady Danbury just shrugs it off. She figures soon enough there'll be a bigger story for them all to sink their teeth into. Kate applauds Lady Danbury's sense of imagination, because a bigger story is something she cannot foresee happening anytime soon. We also see the Bridgertons out on Promenade, and their experience is pretty much the same. No one is interested in socializing. Well, that is, of course, except Lady Featherington, of all people. And naturally, she cannot resist throwing the current circumstances in the Bridgertons' faces. I mean, after all that messy business with Marina and Colin last season, Marina is now Lady Crane, Philippa is now Mrs. Finch, and Prudence is now also engaged. Quite the turn of events. Yet Lady Featherington still wishes Violet good fortune in spite of everything. In other words, she wishes her the exact opposite. We then see Eloise and the Queen, and much like Penelope warned her, Eloise's frequent trips to the printer have brought forth unexpected consequences. The Queen now realizes that Eloise is indeed Lady Whistledown, and no, there's no need to deny it, because it'll only enhance her punishment. I was like, no. Now, throughout a lot of these recaps, I have described Eloise as ever so bold, which can be a good thing, but that same quality can also be to one's detriment. And that is exactly what we're seeing now. I mean, to the Queen, it all makes perfect sense. I mean, after all, she couldn't come up with one credible suspect when the Queen recruited her to seek out Lady Whistledown's identity. She's got a point. She's also conveniently never mentioned in Lady Whistledown's circular, and she also holds a great distaste for society, like Lady Whistledown. Again, great points. Besides, who else could it be? Well, we know who, but it's too late for that now. But wait, it appears that the Queen might be willing to overlook this entire mess were Lady Whistledown willing to use her writing skills to benefit the crown. But then, when Eloise protests again, the Queen assumes that she's simply content to be her rival. I was just, oh my gosh, like we're just gonna keep digging the hole deeper, aren't we? The Queen tells Eloise she has 3 days to consider her proposal and come to her senses. Otherwise, her secret will be unleashed upon the town, and the consequences of that will be unimaginable. Next, we see the Sharmas, Lady Danbury, and Anthony gathered together in Lady Danbury's drawing room. In order to deal with the current circumstances, they'll simply throw a ball. And it'll help everyone to understand that this was simply a mutual decision made by all parties involved to end the union. Simple enough. At one point, Kate's corgi Newton runs into the room and starts pawing at Anthony. Kate and Anthony stand up to shoo him away, and naturally, their eyes meet. And yeah, they literally cannot hide the burning desire that they have for each other, even in front of Edwina and Lady Mary and Lady Danbury. Edwina is stunned. She's like, was I truly that blind? I was like, I think we all know the answer to that question. Lady Danbury knows the answer too, which is why she recommends that Kate and Anthony stay on opposite sides of the room at all times. I mean, if anyone even slightly guesses at the actual scandal at hand, it's really, really downhill from here. Which is really saying something, because it's already downhill from here. We then see Penelope meeting with Eloise, who is now in total panic mode. Eloise explains to Penelope all the circumstances, and Penelope suggests they simply wait for Lady Whistledown's next circular, and perhaps they can use that to prove Eloise's innocence to the Queen. In other words, wait for me to write something that could potentially prove your innocence to the Queen. We also see Penelope meeting with Madame Delacroix, and now that the Queen is involved, it's time for Madame Delacroix to tap out. Madame Delacroix suggests that Penelope simply turn herself in, but even if she does, at this point, she'd simply be dismissed as attempting to help her friend, which might even have its own consequences. But if nothing else, Penelope promises Madame Delacroix that her name will remain unsullied, which then leads Madame Delacroix to suggest that were Penelope to write something that were to sully Eloise's name, that might change the circumstances entirely. But if Penelope does that, you already know the rest. Next, we see Anthony speaking with Benedict at the Royal Academy. Now, throughout the last few episodes, we've been seeing some very brief glimpses at Benedict at the Royal Academy learning about the arts. He's also in the midst of a situationship with a young model named Tessa, who has purposely taken a position as a model to learn from the art classes that aren't accessible to women. Despite his drug-induced haze, Benedict does his best to encourage Anthony. He says as an artist, it's a matter of perspective. He may alter things here and there, but he does not simply toss away his desire and his entire design. Perhaps Anthony, too, could learn to do the same thing. He may have a point. We then see the Sharmas, Lady Danbury, Anthony, and Violet make their way to an art gallery. And per usual, there are all kinds of impolite stares and very rude side eyes. Lady Mary takes Anthony's arm and they walk through the gallery. Anthony does apologize for the situation that he has helped cause, which was never his intention. Although Lady Mary's disposition is chilly at first, she does admit that the blame cannot be entirely laid at his door. She knows that in the wake of her husband's death, it should have been her who was taking on the burdens of the entire family and not Kate. But the problem is, Kate has sacrificed too much now. And this is the result. We also see Will over at his new club, and it appears that business is not booming. Cousin Jack suddenly arrives, but Will is not happy to see him. It's very evident that Will is not impressed by Cousin Jack's desire to scam his way through society. But then, Cousin Jack goes so far as to reference the wager that the late Lord Bridgerton made regarding Will's final match. It appears that if Will hopes to progress in society, he'll have to play ball with Cousin Jack in the meantime. Then Eloise, despite constant warnings and this current situation that is literally looming over her head, decides it's in her best interest to visit Theo again. I cannot. But apparently, it looks like Theo cannot either. I am not sure what kind of reception Eloise was expecting, but Theo is heated. He does not appreciate all the unwarranted attention that has been turned towards him by the Queen because of Eloise. I mean, he was nearly kicked out of the place and almost lost his job. Theo now realizes just how sheltered Eloise is. And while she may have the protection of society and her family, he is neither. And with that, he dismisses her. Back to Mayfair you go. Yikes. Back at the gallery, Edwina approaches Kate and assures her that their story about the wedding and the mutual decision is slowly but surely being accepted. She never realized what a good liar she was, and perhaps that's something else that Kate and the Viscount have taught her. She also knows that despite the many stories of love conquering all and all the happy endings and stories that were read to her as a child, she now knows that there are no happy endings. At least, not in real life. We then see Anthony approach Kate while standing behind one of the nearby statues. He tells Kate that he would like to speak to her alone. And I'm thinking, I do believe that's what started all this in the first place. Not a good idea. But all Kate can say is that they both should be terribly ashamed of what they've done. And as much as I'm kind of here for Kate and Anthony, I can't really disagree. Over the Featheringtons, we see that Penelope is still fretting and still stressed, wondering what she should write in order to help out Eloise. She also has a brief conversation with Colin, who has stopped by the house to discuss a potential investment with Cousin Jack. Don't do it. Before Colin leaves, he asks Penelope if she wouldn't mind keeping the investment a secret from both Anthony and Eloise. He hopes she doesn't mind, considering that there are clearly no secrets between Penelope and Eloise. Secrets? Maybe not. A huge, massive, earth-shattering, shocking, mind-blowing secret? Yeah. Speaking of Eloise, we see her and Penelope speaking over the Bridgertons' home, and Eloise tells Penelope that she is going to confess. Despite Penelope's protests, Eloise realizes it's the only way out of this situation. And as far as Lady Whistledown, she's dead to Eloise. Plus, it'll also give her time to find the real writer and make her pay for all of her crimes. Oh, and the cherry on top of this particular Sunday of madness, Eloise thanks Penelope for always being a loyal friend regardless of the circumstances. Oh, what a tangled web we weave when we practice to deceive. We then fast forward to Violet's ball, which ironically has been titled Harmony. The irony being that current circumstances for pretty much everyone is anything but harmonious. We then see the Bridgertons arriving to greet their guests, along with Lady Danbury and the Sharmas. There's just one problem. There are no guests. But Anthony is not dismayed. As a matter of fact, he decides to lead everyone in a group dance. It's kind of awkward at first, but after a while, everyone really gets into the swing of things. Like they're switching partners and, they're just having a good time. I mean, it's really a moment that's happening here. Let me also say that I find different dances like this throughout cultures, throughout the years, like across the world. I think that is so cool. Like, that would be my goal. Definitely just to have one experience like that, like something where I could participate in that kind of dance. I would love to be able to do that at least one time or even a few times. So my assumption was going to be, okay, they have this great moment and they're celebrating and they're just, having this really great experience together. And then voila, the guests are going to come trickling in unexpectedly. Well, no, that is not what happens. Lady Danbury then notices that the maids are chattering among themselves, and it appears that Lady Whistledown has published another circular. And it explains explicitly why no one has arrived and no one is going to. The circular details how Eloise Bridgerton has been associating unchaperoned with improper company. Now, in the present day, who cares? But in this time and in this society, it is all but a death blow to one's reputation. We then see Penelope crying as she breaks her pen and throws it in the fire. This unexpected scandal is quite exciting to Lady Featherington because with the impending fallout, Colin will be more than anticipating this upcoming investment with Cousin Jack. We then see Kate make her way outside into the garden, and surprise, surprise, Anthony has gotten there first. And at this point, like so many times before, we know how this dynamic goes. It starts with an argument, usually a pointless one, and then of course all the anger and frustration gives way to confessions. Anthony admits that in spite of his family, his reputation, and pretty much everything in his life being on the brink of ruin, it is Kate that his mind continues to drift toward. After more useless arguing, Kate all but admits the same. Anthony then tells her to go inside. Kate says, "What did I tell you about you and your orders?" I was like, no. I know where this is going. Well, for once, rather than do the right thing and stop themselves from doing something very inappropriate and very untoward, they decide to... How should I put it? I don't really have words for it. I think you get the point. I suppose I shouldn't be surprised, but I'm still kind of surprised. I mean, I guess at least how it happened. I mean, we just out here getting it in the garden. Like, I guess when you're ready, you're ready. Get in where you fit in, but whoa. I guess I just wasn't ready. I guess I was not ready. We then see Anthony wake up the next morning to a downpour of rain and no Kate. We also see him head to the study and pull out the betrothal ring. The plot thickens. Then we see him make his way over to Lady Danbury's to speak with Kate. But apparently, it appears that Kate is missing, and so is one of the horses. Unsurprisingly, Kate is out riding her horse at extremely high speeds, pouring rain notwithstanding. We also see Anthony on his horse following behind. He almost catches up to her, then sees that she's about to make her usual jump over the hedges. However, and I suppose I should have seen this coming, but I didn't, the horse isn't feeling too confident about that jump. And instead of jumping, it does the complete opposite. It rears back, and before Anthony can do or say anything, Kate falls off the horse and hits her head. Well, apparently, what began with harmony may just end with tragedy. And that closes out episode 7, Harmony. This episode was kind of chill compared to the last one, but at the end, we definitely ramped it up again. I was like, whoa. Like, maybe not as intense as some of the things we saw last season, but still something I did not see coming. Like I said, we are out here in the garden, just like, like, okay, yeah. Yeah, there's not much else to say. I'm just really interested in seeing how we're going to close everything out. There's a lot of stuff going on with all these individual characters, not just Kate and Anthony. We also have Penelope and Eloise, the fallout from that. How are we going to fix that situation? And just a whole lot going on. So I am definitely excited to watch this last episode and, close this recap series out. I am just really excited to see what's in store and how we're going to close things out going into the next season. So, once again, this is D, Movieman, signing off, and I'll see you with the movie.